So what do you have to say for yourself, Schewe?
Let's talk about bit depth, shall we?
Okay.
Okay, so here's the thing. More bits are better.
Bits is good.
Bits is good. What bits are, it's basically how many levels of discrete information that you have in your file.
How many stairs on the staircase?
How many stairs on the staircase? Very good. When you're capturing digital capture in RAW, you've got 12, 14, upwards to almost 16-bit, although I would argue that it's 15-bit plus some levels because full 16-bit precision depends on what you classify as noise. Mm-hmm. But what I wanted to show here on this bit depth example here is what can end up happening to your image if you're starting your image processing in 8-bit, such as a JPEG.
Right, all JPEGs are 8-bit.
Yeah, so it should also be noted that Photoshop is not actually 16-bit. It says 16-bit in the info palette. Mm-hmm. It's actually 15-bit plus one level. And the reason is that that gives the programmers an exact middle. Full 16-bit, it would have a little bit of problem. So it still has, 15-bit plus one level precision, but arguably 12 or 15-bit captures, there's enough precision to not lose any bits. So what ends up happening is when you have a JPEG, this top image here is basically a gradation that is done in 8-bit. The bottom is a gradation done in 16-bit, 15-bit plus one. And if you look, in essence, within the display capability of this laptop, and we're going to give Chris the actual files so that we don't have to be limited by this actual display, because this is a laptop. So when you're looking at here, the 8-bit and the 16-bit look fine. Okay. Where it comes into play, here's the histogram of the 16-bit and the histogram of the 8-bit, and you can see that the histograms are essentially the same. Where it comes into play is when you actually do manipulation. I'm going to do a levels adjustment that takes the blacks to 20 and the whites to 240. So basically what it's doing is stretching your data. It's taking 240 and turning it into 255 and taking 20 and turning it into 0. So it's stretching the data, and watch what ends up happening. So I'll click that and then update the histogram. And you can see that there are actually gaps in the process.
Tooth comb, not enough
Tooth
data.
comb. But you can actually see some banding going on here in the image. Let me go to the 16-bit and do the same thing. And then update. The histogram is actually displaying an 8-bit version until you actually do update, and it then calculates for the full image. So 8-bit versus 16-bit. Now the thing about it is that when you actually go out to print this, you may or may not see banding. But what ends up happening is that as you're doing digital imaging, there may be some process, some filter, some adjustment that you do that, and gradations are particularly prone to this. Images with a lot of high frequency texture and noise, banding is a lot less of a problem. You see a lot of banding sometimes in blue sky, which has a very slow gradation.
Right.
But what ends up happening is that you're doing a color transform from the capture, then you're doing a workspace in Photoshop, and then you're doing an output transform either to sRGB for the web or to the printer profile. All of those transforms, Photoshop is not infinitely precise. It introduces errors, and the more you do to an image, the more likely you'll end up getting banding. So the way to basically resolve that is just always work in 16-bit.
Right. And so just remembering your camera, depending on whether it's a an inexpensive consumer grade, in which case it's probably capturing 12-bit, whether it's a high-end DSLR, in which case it's likely 14, or a medium format back, in which case it's likely 16 or just close to 16.
Yeah. Near 16.
Yeah. In any event, regard 16-bit on your computer, in Photoshop, as a big bucket. And even if you only put 12 bits worth of data in it, you're still mixing it in the big bucket. And so you're not losing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really the important thing about bit depth. And, you know, you can argue that printers can't really print 16-bit, even though on the Mac we have a 16-bit print pipeline. On Windows, we don't have that yet. And you're hard-pressed to be able I can create an artificial situation where you can see a gradation in printing 8-bit pipeline versus 16-bit pipeline. But for the most part, when you're working in 16-bit in Photoshop or Lightroom, because it's 16-bit ProPhoto linear, Adobe Ace is doing the transform in actual 20-bit precision. So it's oversampling in order to get the final print profiled transformed color image. So
bottom line, the bigger the space, whether it's a color space or bit depth, the more data you have, the better your final output.
Correct.
What about if your starting point is an 8-bit image? What then?
Well,
you know, a JPEG.
Yeah. If you're gonna do substantial and strong manipulation of the image, you can get a better result by doing a transform into 16-bit. The argument is that you don't get the full 16-bit. It's a little bit like a sex change operation. Once you chop it off to 8-bit, you can't grow it back. It doesn't expand.
That's an analogy I wouldn't have used, but
yeah,
okay.
Well, I've used it before. In this video, I think.
Go ahead.
Okay. So what ends up happening is that because you increase the precision of the algorithmic transforms, you know, the adjustments and all that stuff, you can arguably get a better result. One of the things that I would also say, if you're forced to start with an 8-bit JPEG, for example, I'd run it through Camera Raw. Because quite honestly, even though Camera Raw was designed, or Lightroom, Camera Raw was designed for raw digital capture, its processing pipeline is really truly optimized, and you can probably get a better result running a camera JPEG through Camera Raw or Lightroom than opening it up in Photoshop and then doing the processing.
Okay, so, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Good, thanks.